Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're here, the Natrona County Board of County Commissioners, for our regularly scheduled meeting Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. It's 5:30 p.m. The meeting's called to order. Roll call.
Commissioner Brill,
Present.
Commissioner Laird,
Present.
Commissioner Milne,
Here.
Commissioner North,
Here.
Chairman Nicolason.
Here. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Born and unborn. The first item on our agenda is the approval of a request for a county sponsorship for a rail trail extension and pedestrian overpass crossing. This, for clarification, is for a TAP statement of intent, which is required to be submitted by April 14th, which is before our next meeting. So this is not a decision to proceed forward with sponsorship of the actual project. We would file as sponsors under the statement of intent, and then in June, there could be sponsorship of the actual overpass. This would connect Edna's Kimball Wilkins Park to the state land and the rail, the abandoned railroad right-of-way on the south side of the Glen Rock Highway. We did have good discussion and a presentation this afternoon at our work session. Commissioners, I will open it up to your comment. Commissioner Laird.
I think it's a good idea.
Thank you. Any other comment? Then I would entertain a motion to approve Natrona County being listed as the sponsor for just the purposes of the statement of intent.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Friel, seconded by Commissioner Milne. Any additional discussion? Then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Milne, seconded by Commissioner Friel to approve consent agenda items. Is there any discussion? Then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda items have been approved. The next item is essentially a continuation of the public hearing for the adoption of the 2021 ICC codes. We, at our March 19th meeting, had discussion on the different codes that were proposed for adoption. We wanted to gather additional information, so therefore we only adopted 5 of the proposed 9. I will, at this time, open the hearing again, taking it off the table. Can we have a staff report?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Commissioners, we did have an opportunity, or I should say, Mr. Varel had more of an opportunity to speak with the State Fire Marshal in regards to the required codes that need to be adopted. Essentially, it's my understanding that at a minimum, the codes that need adopted would be the ones that were already passed, but also the International Mechanical Code. But the state fire marshal did, in speaking with Mr. Vrill, state that the residential code, the plumbing code, and the residential code and plumbing code are referred to in the International Building Code. So portions of those would essentially need to be adopted as well. Maybe not the entire code, but at least portions. My understanding is that the fire marshal was not happy that everything wasn't adopted at the last meeting, as he's already given us quite a bit of leeway, given that we're already well behind in our adoption of the codes. Back in February, the state actually has now adopted the 24 codes, so we're already going to have to begin that process. If these codes are not adopted tonight, as we don't really have time to go back and revise anything, there's a chance that we do lose our home rule. So my suggestion would be to, or request would be to adopt the codes as they have been presented, and then we can get moving on with the process for adopting the 24 codes. And then I'll let Mr. Vrill go through any more details.
Speaking with the state fire marshal, Byron Matthews, the codes that were not adopted last session, as it reads in the statute, 358106A, and then authority under statute 163101 through 104, any codes so referenced in the IBC and the IRC, which would be the plumbing, mechanical, fuel gas, as council has noted, are therefore adopted in reference through chapter 1 through 10 of the IRC, International Residential Code. The failure to do so, the original of the opposition last session, per the fire marshal, states that a jurisdiction is identified as home rule or authority having jurisdiction by adopting the few codes that we did. However, if they're referenced in the code, they have to be admitted or adopted in order to maintain home rule. Failure to do so removes the, I guess, the privilege and the ability of a jurisdiction to levy permits. Therefore, the state of Wyoming will therefore will administer and enforce building codes per state statute.
Very good. Any
I have a question.
questions? Commissioner Laird?
I'm at a loss to understand how, if they're forcing us to do this, we have home rule anyway. I mean, they're saying we got to do it or we're going to lose our home rule.
It allows us, Commissioner, to have some leeway with some interpretations of the rules and adopting some more specific policies with the rules themselves.
But is this going to be a real burden on people out in the county that are not used to some of these rules that aren't really needed in Wyoming? That's what I'm wondering. And just take a shot, either one of you, at that. I mean, it's almost a threat. I hate it when some state guy threatens me. I don't like that.
It's not intended to be a threat. What happens is, under the rules of authority having jurisdiction or home rule, a jurisdiction has the right to vote in or vacate certain parts of the code. Under Dillon rule, you only have so much authority that the state allots or allows you to use. If we do not adopt these codes, we lose home rule, and the state of Wyoming then takes over and will enforce what codes they have adopted.
So are you both, you gentlemen, recommending we pass all of these?
Yes, Commissioner.
Yes.
And I have a high degree of respect for both of you. Thank you.
Commissioner North?
Just for clarification, if the state comes in and takes over, we've lost all our authority over vacating any portion of these codes. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So by adopting these, it actually gives us the ability to go in with some of these codes and say, we're not going to enforce this portion of it. We can choose bits and pieces of it that we want to enforce. Now, I'm not saying that that's across the board, but it gives us more authority and more latitude in what we do and how we do it without the state stepping in.
That's
According to what the current statute is. The only way we're going to get around that is by having the state statutes changed, just like we did with property tax. That's something that we need to look at. And fortunately, we have one of our senators in here tonight, so I'll get with him and see if we can start working on some of this stuff and see if we can get some things drafted along with a few other of our legislators to see if we can make this so it's a little bit more friendly. But right now, our hands are tied. They're tied by our statutes and they're tied by the state as far as what we can and can't do. I don't like international codes any more than anybody else does. I completely disagree with a lot of it. But if we don't, it's kind of like speeding. If you're speeding, you have the choice whether you want to speed or not. But if you get caught, then that choice is no longer yours. You're going to have to pay the cost of it. I don't want to pay the cost of having the state come in here and dictating to us what we do. And the other thing, we lose our ability to grant permits and control that side of it if we don't have that. So,
Commissioner Friel.
Probably going to beat a dead horse here, but Mr. Burrell, exactly what Commissioner North just said. If you lose home rule, the state comes in and takes over. So we would not be in charge of what happens here within the county or giving out permits, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then just to clarify, if within the codes, if any of them that were not adopted last meeting are referenced anywhere within what has been adopted, then we obviously need to adopt those codes if we have a reference between the two of them, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any other questions of the two of you. We will, did you have something you wanted to say?
I do have, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
one last thing. Along with those codes that were tabled, the last thing that was tabled, as the motion was to table everything that wasn't passed, was the rules of practice. So we do need to adopt those, as those just essentially made some changes, updating some language for the rules of practice for the Board of Appeals.
Well, I don't know if we've talked about rules of practice before. Did we talk about rules of practice at the last meeting?
We did.
All right, and so are there significant material changes?
No, Commissioner, or Mr. Chair, it's essentially changing some of the language to clarify the difference between the Board of Appeals, the Board of County Commissioners, and making some of the process clear.
Oh, okay. I think okay. In any event, nothing significant in your opinion?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Are we clear on what the four are? I wrote them down last time and I can't find my note. You got it? All right, I think we're good. So at this time, I'd ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the adoption of the remaining 2021 ICC codes to please approach. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of adoption of those remaining 2021 ICC codes and the rules of practice, please approach. All right, and the third call in favor of. Okay, now at this time, I'd ask for individuals wishing to speak in opposition of adopting the remaining 2021 ICC codes and the rules of practice to please move forward to approach the lectern.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Jason Gutierrez, 9350 Lochner Road. There are several other counties in the state of Wyoming that do not adopt these codes. So I wonder how they handle and negotiate through the state statute. We are really on one of 3 or 4 counties in the state that go to this level. I brought in these 2 reams of paper to signify half of the regulations were talking about adopting. It's just shy of 2,000 pages of regulations. I believe it's burdensome of the Natrona County residents. Remember, most of our residents reside within the municipalities, not out in the unincorporated Natrona County. So there are many other counties with more population that handle that without the adoption of these international codes. I guess there's a couple other items here, that rules of practice. We briefly had a conversation about that last time. I did not bring that with us because I guess I didn't see that was advertised that we were going to talk about it. But one of those requirements was a contractor had to be licensed in another jurisdiction before we would even entertain them in our jurisdiction. And I don't think that's right. I think we ought to welcome businesses and welcome contractors into our community, and sure feel like there's ought to be a way we can work around that where contractors could come into this community. Maybe this is the only community they live in and want to work in. So that was an issue. I also had an issue with the contractor affidavit. We've had some conversation about that in the past, and that was also included in the last meeting's appendices in the back. I did do a little research before, and City of Casper doesn't even require that affidavit if you're going to do your own work, even on a commercial building in the City of Casper. So again, I think we're overreaching and not being very welcoming to folks coming to the county looking for guidance or assistance. And those are a couple areas that we could soften things up to try to be more welcoming and a resource to folks. So with that concludes my comments, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner.
Mr. Gutierrez, before you leave, I'd like to ask a question. I believe you used to be in the position that Mr. Verrill's in now, correct?
I was in the Natrona County building official, yes.
Okay, so when you were in there, did you adopt all of these codes?
They were older versions of these codes, and I would say that gave me the intimate knowledge to understand how overreaching these codes were. And when we had to go out to somebody in an unincorporated area and try to explain to them how this international code affected their three-sided barn they wanted to keep their horses in. And so that was pretty impactful to me to see how this was overreaching on Natrona County residents. That's why I'm here today.
So back to my original question, did you adopt those codes?
I was the building official when the older versions of this was adopted, yes.
So you did, yes. Is that correct?
I was the building official when the older versions were there, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the adoption of the remaining 2021 ICC codes or the rules of practice, please approach the lectern.
Judy Jones, 335 North 8 Mile, Casper. People do grow, Mr. Farrell. They do change their minds. They do get a better understanding of something once they study it. That's what colleges are. So Jason changed his mind. BFD. I change my mind all the time. Okay, here we go. Building code, residential code, existing building code, fire code, mechanical code. What is that? Does anyone tell me? What's the mechanical code? What does it cover? So you guys need to know what I'm doing with my air conditioner, right? Okay, plumbing code, fuel gas code, what's that? Is that the distance between where I have I don't know, 500 gallon of fuel for my tractor, or is it my lawnmower that's underneath the shed? I'd like to know that too. Electrical code, electrical safety code.
Ms. Jones, do you want a response to the fuel gas?
Yeah, normally you
Just
guys
in-
don't answer me, so that's
Just
cool.
in general, Patrick, what does that one govern?
Fuel gas is, it govern or it will establish the parameters of gas lines, your gas feeds, what you require in order to properly operate the HVAC system in your home, proper ventilation, so there's no carbon monoxide gas.
I think most people would, or contractors would probably cover that if it was something like that. Okay, permit schedule fee, no changes. Still outrageous. What was it? Up to $5,000 was a $100 permit. I don't care. Proposed contracting license rules and regulations. Policy contract exemption forms, updated contract forms. You know, why would I trade one tyrant 500 miles away for 5 in my backyard? Because this board changes out like the wind. Every, 3 years, 2 years? Boom, 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 boom. Everybody's got a new way of doing things, a new way of wanting to do things. Why would we tie ourselves to this when the next guys might be thinking they're DIYers like me? I do a lot of stuff. And I don't need the county to come out and check my frame when I build a little poop house, you know? It's just, and the fact that you're worried about one guy in Cheyenne making rules and we might have to live by all of them. I'd rather have one guy than 5 guys that change out every 3 years. Because this will change and change and change and change, just like everything else. Also, I kind of wondered if there was some money attached to this. Do you guys get a grant or something like that to adopt these? No. No? Is that right, Dave? No? Okay. So I'm against it. I think you guys ought to just leave it alone. Let the guys down there home rule. You lose a little power. BFD. You got too much power as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition of the adoption of these remaining 2021 ICC codes or the rules of practice, please approach.
Commissioners, Jason Knope, 4760 Ross Ridge Road. We just went through adoptions of codes for the community of Rollins and town of Sinclair, and we left the ones you guys are debating on 2018 as well, and we did not upgrade those to 2021 because of the overreaching stuff that is added in 2021. Those two communities did not update and upgrade. They're still working on 2018 codes for those ones. So to let you know that. I definitely would like to speak against requiring to be licensed with another jurisdiction. Coates Construction operated in this community from 70 to 2021. And in the 90s, we refused to work for the city of Casper. There was a huge feud and big things. We never built in the city of Casper in the 90s. We only built in the county. So to require somebody to go to the city just to build in the county, I don't think that should be required either. There's other ways to do testing for you guys to have that ability to do that with yourself. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any others wishing to speak in opposition of adoption of the remaining 2021 ICC codes and the rules of practice, please approach.
Tracy Lamont, 9855 Crimson Dawn Road. I have more of a question here of the new planner or the new P&Z man. I learned through the grapevine here that, let me back up. We built a new steel building here on our property on Casper Mountain a couple of years back, and the snow load was 100 pounds. So just out of curiosity, I asked them to calculate it again. Same elevation, but these new rules, it's 169 pounds. That's almost a 70% increase. So on that issue and that issue alone, I'm going to encourage you to step aside and not approve these on it. And I would get the fire marshal in here. Is he the man that's dictating to you what you guys got to do? The state fire marshal? Not that I'm undermining, but if we've got our old planner in here saying, this is not a good deal, I'd encourage you guys to table it once again and invite the state fire marshal up here and have him tell you firsthand, get these guys off the hook. Right now, they look like they're trying to push you a bill of goods here, and I don't think they are on it, but we need more rules and regulations. If we've got a 70% increase in snow load, my Lord, that's a heck of a jump. And so what other surprises are in there too as well?
Tracy, that's not 100% accurate. It's still 30 and 100. as far as your snow loads go, but there is another program that you can utilize that can actually tell you if it's lower or higher than that 100. So you still have your choice. If you're on the mountain, you can build it at a 100-pound snow load. But there are places like along the face of the mountain that don't get that much snow. But if it's above 6,000 feet, you currently have to have it at a 100-pound snow load. Our building inspector, our head of our building department and I had a long discussion about this right after he first got on, because there was a lot of that stuff. And there's actually a program that you can actually utilize that shows that in some of these areas, you don't have to build it to a 100-pound snow load. And there's others that show higher, but you have that choice of using either one of those to your advantage. So it's still the same as
So are you telling me it's still at 100 pounds?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. But there are some places though that if you use this and it comes out that it's less than 100, then you don't have to build it to a 100-pound snow load. It's a computerized program that goes.
Interesting. I'm getting conflicting, not that I'm doubting what
yeah.
you're telling me.
Yeah.
And I just assume the planner come back to me and say, hey, here's what your snow load needs to be if you're going to build that building again. I'd still like you to get the fire marshal in here because it looks to me like you're being sabotaged. That's the bottom line here. And if we've got other counties and other cities in the state that aren't following suit here, why are we going to jump off of a cliff on it? It kind of reminds me of some of the debacle that was involved with the city of Casper, and Dallas alluded to that at the last meeting, and you guys ended up dumping a bunch of that, didn't you?
At this point, Tracy, I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't either. So anyway, I'd ask you to table it again. But I think we're jumping off a cliff here. And I'm only using that as one example. I had another example for Ponderosa Park too, but if that stands true, but don't tell me, show me. I learned that a long time ago. And so, Mr. Planner, I'll look forward to seeing you. Have you show me what the snow load is where we're located on Casper Mountain. Fair enough? Oh, never mind. We'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the adoption of the 2021 ICC codes and the rules of practice? Please approach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Bob Ide, 3838 Garden Creek Road. I wasn't necessarily planning on speaking on this topic, but just a point of information. One of the bills that we actually got through that didn't get vetoed this session was a contractor reciprocity bill. I don't know if anybody followed it. Not sure how it pertains to locally, city versus county, but it was a bill that basically, if you had a contractor's license in, say, Natrona County or the city of Casper, you could go to another city and you wouldn't necessarily have to jump through all the hoops and take all of the tests if you could abide by their insurance laws and other things that they required. You didn't have to go through all the testing. So just wanted to make that point of information. And Mr. Gutierrez brought up a point that makes me curious about the other counties that that have not adopted the international building codes. I'd be interested to know more about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the adoption, please approach.
Rosemary Saban, Natrona County resident. I think there's a lot of people in this county that want to build the right way. I, for one, am that. You know, I don't want to cut corners. I want to build so I have a safe product and I don't hurt anybody else. In the past, we've had issues with the building department being, shall we say, less than helpful and accommodating and more of a hindrance and discouraging. I had a short conversation with Pat, and I think he's wanting to do the right thing, but there are other counties that do not have these restrictions. And Mr. Nicolason, at the end of the work session, I just heard you yourself say that you hate threats and the loss of freedoms. Well, if you want to give us more freedoms, then quit growing government. And this is a growth in government and regulations and limiting our freedoms. Out in the sub-rural areas of the county, it's not a huge imposition that we need to have building codes that match that of the city building codes. So how much of this is tied to that zoning resolution that was illegally adopted? And I got a question as to whether that was legally adopted back in the 80s in the first place. Was it put up for public discussion or anything? Because there seems to be a lot of these cases where the public isn't allowed to comment. I'll get into that later. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the adoption of the remaining 2021 ICC codes or the rules of practice, please approach. All right. There being no others to speak in favor of or against the adoption of the remaining 2021 ICC codes and the rules of practice, I now declare the public hearing closed. I'd entertain a motion.
What? No, I don't like, turn my light off, though.
Commissioner North.
I'm going to make a motion that we approve the remaining of these. It's not that I like them. I have been very clear about that for a long time, but at the same time, I don't want to lose home rule, and I don't want to lose the ability for this county to be able to regulate how we do things. I don't like it. I'll tell you that right now. And I've been involved with codes in more ways than most of the people in here have for a long, long time. But this is one of those that I have to hold my nose to make the motion, because I really don't care for them any more than most of you do. And but at the same time, we need to change some of our rules, and I'm not sure just exactly how these other counties are getting around this without having the state step in either. And that's something that we can look at, and I think that we should. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve the remaining codes. Do you need me to list those?
Would you please?
Okay. The International Mechanical Code, the International Residential Code, the International Plumbing Code, and the rules of practice. I'd make a motion that we approve those.
All right, is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I don't really need to say more than what Dave did. As far as maintaining home rule.
We'll do discussion
We'll
here in a minute.
We'll do, right. But with that said, yeah, I'll second it reluctantly.
All right, so it's been moved by Commissioner North, seconded by Commissioner Milne. Now, Commissioner Milne, you can have more discussion if you'd like.
I'm already made them. It's good.
Anyone else have discussion on this
I
item?
have a little teeny discussion here.
Commissioner Laird.
I don't like putting you on the platform, Miss County Attorney, without having to ask you about it previously and giving you a chance to research it, but can a fire marshal, a state fire marshal, threaten us and say he's gonna take away our home rule if we don't pass something that he doesn't even know what we're gonna pass?
So
I don't think
Mr.
he has the authority to do that.
Chairman Nicolais and Commissioner Laird, so I have just generally looked at these. There are certain codes that are required to be adopted. I am not familiar enough to know the entire scope, but I do believe that the state fire marshal is the person that at least can initiate that process of taking home rule away from the county should you choose not to adopt them. Whether that decision lies entirely with him, I'm not entirely certain about that, but I do believe that he can at least get it going.
You know, I like the idea of having him come up here so Mr. Nicolason and I and the rest of the commission can ask him a few questions. Because I just don't like the threat at all. I'm tending to vote. I have total trust in our employees, but I when I hear a threat conveyed through our employees, I don't like people doing that. If they want to threaten me, they can call me up personally and threaten me. Because I don't think he has the authority to do that. And I don't like the deal, Mr. Chairman, of this issue about how a guy or a woman has to get a building permit. And then Senator Ide tells us there's a statute that says if you've got one in the city, you get I sounded like you don't have to get one here. Or a license, I mean. Yeah, I mean a license. That's what I mean.
All right.
And so anyway, the whole thing just doesn't feel very good to me. Thank you.
Commissioner Milton.
Using the opportunity to change my mind. I think this will establish status quo for right now. We're about to need to look at the new upcoming ones. That would be a good opportunity as we're looking at forward to respectfully request the fire marshal, state fire marshal, or his representative to come up here and explain this of just what and answer our questions. And then with the new code, we can take a look and do that recension of certain portions that aren't required, right? And so this new one gives us opportunity, but at this point in time, we're so far behind the 8 ball with the 21 codes that I think that we just need to, it's status quo. Let's move forward.
Commissioner Friel.
Well, exactly what Commissioner Milne just said is where I was going to go with that. We are behind. This needs to be adopted. The next set's coming in. That's the time to sit down with the fire marshal and answer the questions you have. Go to the other communities, as Mr. Knopp said, go to the other communities and see what they have and haven't adopted and what we really do need to adopt. But right now, we are way behind, and so I think it's best to do it tonight, and then let's get started on the next ones.
So therefore, all in favor of the motion to adopt, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
I oppose it because I don't like to be threatened.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is to receive public comments. I guess I will say once again, this isn't a question and answer session. You can let us know if you have questions. You can submit your questions to us, and we can get back to you after conferring with the appropriate department of the county. Take less than 5 minutes. If you are able, please don't repeat what's been said multiple times already. It's not necessarily effective at all. I think that we'll just open it up and folks can come on down.
Talking about gravel pit, is that now?
Yeah, tonight we're not.
Main event.
Yeah, tonight we're not saying these people get to go first or those people.
Got it.
So just come on up.
All right. Colby Frontier. I live in Natrona County. I spoke a few times ago about the ethics of whether or not it's right or wrong to put the gravel pit there. We all kind of I think probably can agree that it's not a great choice for the residents in that area to have gravel pit in their area, which is to be determined by experts. I think since we vote to have you guys here, that doesn't necessarily make us experts, but it does give us a nice voice, right? I mean, when we sat down together and chatted about what would be nice to have trail access and things, that was a good conversation, and it got you my vote, right? And so I think that dialogue gets to continue here on a public forum, which is a privilege, right? I recognize that privilege and I respect the roles that you take in that, and hope that you hear these people. Maybe they're not considered experts and maybe they are, which is kind of why I wanted to learn a little bit more about what we're considering an expert, so that when these people do go expend resources and make decisions and to try to get experts here, is it a degree seeking? Is it a person who holds a degree in this area of study? Do we need a hydrologist? Do we need an engineer for this stuff? Is that sort of what we're considering an expert? I know you don't want questions. I guess we can assume.
So Colby, if we can, at the end of all this, we're going to have some commissioner comments.
Yeah, of course.
And I will speak to this issue, having retained lots of experts before, and I know Commissioner Laird can too.
Absolutely.
We can't give you legal advice, but we can tell you kind of just generally what the parameters are, because you may be an expert when it comes to trails and bikes, and I know you're an expert in some of these matters with your certifications. So we can talk about that, but let's not open up the can of worms of Q&A right now.
Cool.
Thanks.
So yeah, that's great. So we'll assume that an expert can be a degree holding person. They've got experience. They've got a deep knowledge in the subject area, or just common understanding. And I think most of the residents on Coates Road would probably be considered experts just by way of experience of living in that area. They've got a good level of knowledge of how the water flows. I mean, we did have the engineer speak on the water rights and sheds and all that kind of stuff. That was really informational for me. I did hear that a homeowner was told that if they didn't want this, they probably should have considered that before they moved next to state land, which, that's a zinger. That's probably one of the biggest draws to living next to state land, is that it's open and beautiful and preserved and nice. I recently took a family trip to Bentonville, Arkansas, which is the founding location of Walmart, which some of us love and some of us hate. But that town has 56,000 people and 400 miles of single track. 70 of which are within city limits. The rest are connected to the outside city limits. Like the sidewalks actually have jumps on them, and there's trails by the elementary schools. And I read into some of the real estate listings, and a lot of them used trail access as a selling feature on the descriptions of the homes. It would say something like, just minutes from X, Y, and Z trail, trails in your backyard, trail maps and access right out the front door, that kind of stuff. It was pretty interesting. None of those real estate listings stated that a gravel pit was nearby, which I think is, probably easily seen that it could be a detraction to the real estate and for the residents in that area. I'm opposed to it because it threatens like one of our only in-town trail access areas that are heavily used by the high school students that have a high school team that was started a few years ago and is growing. It kind of threatens that livelihood of that program. So it hurts the youth. If we remove reasons for people to want to be here, then they'll leave, and we'll have to continue providing economic concessions for things like the airport. I don't think Bentonville struggles with their airports. We do, because people don't really want to fly here, and they're not going to want to fly here if there's a gravel pit and the trail access. But they would fly here if we had a lot of trails. I'm extremely biased, and I'm not trying to hide that. I'm a trail user. I've been on runs with Peter and in races and enjoy outdoor recreation by way of single track trail. And so I'm coming to you from that user group. But I also know that in real estate and in other areas of our industry around here, we need gravel. I just don't think it's the right place to have it there because of the other aspects of that entity. I talked earlier about the value versus the proposition, and it doesn't seem to add up. And I think we need to really consider that. I don't know if you have the opportunity to vote this down or not. I'm very new to this and don't understand the process completely, and I'm working to learn it. But I do know that a voice is a voice and a vote is a vote, and I just wanted to make that statement. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the County Commissioners, distinguished guests. My name is Jim Gunderson, 3220 Arroyo Drive. I'm a native of Casper, an NCHS and UW graduate, and after living on the East Coast for the past 7 years, my wife and I moved back to Casper a year ago to be closer to the kids and grandkids, and the grandeur of Casper in general, and Casper Mountain specifically. I'm here tonight to speak on what has no doubt become one of the most volatile issues in memory of Casper and Natrona County. Of course, I'm referring to the proposed abomination of a gravel pit proposed by Prism and managed by Kyle True. I could spend this time talking about the health factors and concerns that this pit will undoubtedly bring. I could spend time talking about the negative traffic impacts to the Coates Road, Squaw Creek, Highway 220, and surrounding areas. I could spend this time talking about the decreased property values of the affected area and the immediate surrounding areas. I could spend this time talking about the negative impacts to recreation, wildlife habitat, and watershed. While these are all valid points, I want to expand further about the overall impacts of this proposed travesty. Not only because this would be an abomination to the effect of the immediate area, but will also have a devastating effect on Casper and Natrona County as a whole. Members of the county commissioners, and many present here today, are old enough to remember that metal recycling business that was along I-25 between Center and Beverly. I also remember that one of the reasons our city leaders wanted to remove it was because, frankly, it was an eyesore. It had a negative impact on the impressions that visitors to Casper had, and negative impacts on direct businesses, not only local business development, but also bringing new businesses to Casper. When people looking to travel as tourists or looking to relocate for work, they're looking for good paying jobs, recreational opportunities, adventure, learning, historical opportunities for their children, and beautiful scenery. When groups like the CNFR, NJCAA, and others are looking for venues, they are looking at infrastructure and, for lack of a better term, curb appeal. When businesses are looking to expand or relocate, they want an inviting community, a business-friendly environment, along with those amenities I mentioned before, such as adventure, learning opportunities, and beautiful scenery. Entities like the Casper Chamber of Commerce, Visit Casper, City of Casper, and Natrona County use images of our city, and especially the mountain, as a way to entice people to consider, visit, relocate, and establish businesses here in Casper. Unless the vision for Natrona County and Casper is to look like the area east of Gillette or near Butte, Montana, allowing this abomination to continue will make their jobs exponentially harder, if not impossible. Imagine being in business or a show like CNFR or an Olympic-level complex, or a family looking to come to Casper either to visit or live, and they see these beautiful pictures on websites, flyers, mailers, or heard stories from friends and family and associates that have visited here in the past, only to see a massive scar marring up what was once a beautiful Casper mountain. How many people will choose not to stop in Casper other than a quick meal, gas, and a bathroom break because of the unattractiveness of that pit? How many shows will let their contract expire because of our ineffectiveness to preserve an aesthetically pleasing community? How many shows will simply just not even inquire further upon discovery that we let a natural resource be consumed by greed and blatant disregard for our citizens and their wishes? How many businesses will look elsewhere to expand or relocate for the same reasons? The only winners in allowing this pit to continue will be the avarice of Kyle True, his business and associates and investors, and a handful of workers who will be employed to pillage this mountain. Casper will lose out on millions and millions of dollars because of the myopic greed of Kyle True and Prism, but only if we allow this pit to be developed. If we do not learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. The city and county put forth a good effort to clean up the I-25 corridor years ago, and for these same reasons I mentioned above, and that was only a small segment compared to the monstrosity that will be the Prism pit. The city of Casper and Natrona County has poured hundreds of thousands, nay, millions of dollars to beautify the city, to bring in new businesses, to improve infrastructure and recreational opportunities for those of us who choose to live here. I'm not a tree hugger by any means. However, I am all for being better stewards of what we do have. There is a place for this type of mining, but it is not Casper Mountain. Kyle doesn't want this pit in his backyard, and we don't want it in ours. We, all of Natrona County, must be better stewards, and with your help, commissioners, we can stop this pending catastrophe. As our elected officials, your prime duty is the protection and preservation of the people, all the people, not just those with deep pockets and big investors. Hand in hand, we must be better stewards of the irreplaceable resources that have been placed in your charge. Casper Mountain and its foothills are indeed some of these irreplaceable resources. You have the opportunity here, now, today, to be better stewards. And I'm imploring each and every one of you and everyone in this room to oppose this heinous pit being proposed by someone who should know better. Let us stop this dreadful eyesore before it continues further and becomes an irreversible disaster. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thank you, sir. Good
Evening, Commissioners. Pat Sullivan, Coates Road resident. Let's see. Last time I was here, we were discussing raising my property taxes 47%. Now we're discussing a gravel pit in my backyard. But whatever. I'm here to kind of follow up on what Colby was saying about experts, as we've listened to you guys, not request, but say. You've had four experts speak in front of you. Brian Connolly, he was a supervisor of County Weed and Pest. He's recently retired. He's a respected attorney. He spoke here in the last 3 weeks. Bruce Lawson, he worked as mine development and reclamation manager. He was in charge of the permitting, the developing, and large-scale non-coal mining operations. Andrew Beamer, civil engineer. He worked as an engineer with the city of Casper. He's retired, director of public services. He was in charge during the planning and designing paving of the north end of Coates Road. And Jason Knopp, he's an expert. This is his wheelhouse. This is what he does. He's a certified engineer. He administers several contracts in mining and helps. I know he helps with the dump and a lot of other things. So that's it. We've heard from a few experts. We'll bring some more, but just want to let you guys know we've already brought some. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Paulette Perry Bray, and I live at 7150 Coates Road. I was born and raised at this address. I hold one of the state land leases that Prism Logistics applied to mine. My family has held that lease since 1972. We built all the fences around it and have had cattle up there, horses up there, every year. I can't imagine defacing these state lands and the school section. If this happens, it could possibly take generations to bring back the deer, antelope migrations, and the water levels and vegetation of growth. I also have brought in new petitions. We now have over 5,000 signatures.
Good evening, Roberto Fares. I live on Coates Road. Hello, everybody. I'm just trying to understand this expertise kind of dilemma for such simple concepts. So the problems up there is that we're going to breathe in silica, which is a foreign object that goes into your lungs that can cause inflammation, irritation, scarring, and then you can most likely need oxygen to breathe and slowly decay from the inside out. That's one. Number two is water. So, and then the other thing with the water is in kindergarten or first or second grade at the beach, when we played at the beach, the water comes, and it comes in, if you stop it, it doesn't come in. If you mess with it, it goes all over. So then we have no water. So how is it that we need an expert to tell us that if I have no water, how can I live? if in a zoo or your pet, you cut off the water, in about 3 or 4 days, the pet's going to get sick and die, dehydrated. So what kind of expert needs to come in and tell us that? Because this is the issue here. If you just do a scoop of gravel there because it's so shallow, there's no water comes to my house anymore, and everybody else's. So then I'm under threat. That's my livelihood. I need to drink water. And I live there. So the castle, the whole thing of the castle doctrine and all that. So how can you cut off my water and I have no recourse? I think when you start injuring other human beings, it goes above all other laws and stuff. You can do all these rules and regulations until you start hurting other people by taking away possibly their water and their air to breathe. Those are two main things that we need to live as humans. And I don't know what kind of expert we need to tell us that. We all learned that at an early age. If we don't drink, we're not going to make it. If you put a mask on, a gas mask, and try to clean the chicken coop, it's hard to breathe through. So we learned those things, that we need those two essential things. So what kind of expert do we have to bring in to tell us that water is essential and that air needs to be clean? Everybody knows that. It's common sense. I would say that if I'm taking away your water, I need to bring an expert to tell you how being without water is good. The experts should be brought by the person or whoever it is that's trying to take away my water and prove that I can live without water. Or prove that if I breathe silica, just like if I put my hand in a rose bush and I get all thorns in it and I got pus, I can pick those out, but once it's in my lungs, just have that same concept, I can't take them out. So the experts need to be brought by whoever is trying to eliminate water and tell me that, or all of us, that water, it's okay if you don't have water. You don't have to drink. You don't have to be under stress for, that's another thing. Somebody's, I'm not going to have any water tomorrow. You can't bathe, hygiene, all kinds of stuff happen. So now I'm stressed. Now my cortisol goes up. Now my insulin goes up. Now pro-inflammatory markers go up. If I have MS or something else, I can precipitate that just by the stress of a threat of me not having water. All my savings are gone. So I don't think we need experts for anything. I think this is a common sense situation that's so simple. I love mining. I wish I had 10 mines of my own. But I want to do them where I'm not going to, like if I live next to any of you and I have to call 411 and they tell me don't dig there because there's a pipe, well, I got a permit. I'm going to do it anyway. So then I'm going to cut somebody's water off. And what is your recourse? What if you can't afford to have an attorney, this and that? It's like water we're talking about. We're talking about essential things to humans, not like the lollipops or popcorn. Oh my God, I can't get popcorn. Okay. Then we have an argument, a different argument. But water and clean air are required for me to live. And somebody that wants to not do well and to take those away, we don't need experts from our part. I want to hear an expert tell me that if I don't drink, I'm okay.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I think the previous speaker mentioned that you had already heard from me, but I don't think that's true. Andrew Beamer, recently retired Public Services Director with the City of Casper. Commissioner Millen, good seeing you again. I'm here to talk about Coach Road. The county may recall back in 2021, they entered into an agreement with the City of Casper to help pave that portion of Coach Road within the city limits. They paid a third of it. The residents also paid a third, and the City of Casper paid a third of that cost as well. That cost was roughly in the neighborhood of $135,000 total. So you paid $45,000 to pave that portion of Coach Road inside the city limits. Coach Road is considered a low-volume road and was paved accordingly. It was paved with 4 inches of asphalt over pretty much the existing base course. Any significant gravel operations, that road will not take. The county also paid to pave an additional 1,100 feet or 1,200 feet into the county because of the washboarding effects that you guys could not control without having to get a blade out there every few months or so. I know Carter Napier, city manager, already mentioned that road is not built to handle those types of standards, and he was absolutely correct. 4 inches of asphalt will not support that traffic load of any significant mining operation. So.
Thank you very much for the info.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Terry Winggerter, 1427 Hornchurch Road in Casper. I should say Avenue instead of road, sorry. But did any of you see 60 Minutes the other night? Where there was about a 20-minute segment about Casper, Wyoming. And if you didn't see it, I'd go back to YouTube and take that in. But anyway, it wasn't about just Casper. It was the races that the Indian tribes had out at the fairgrounds. But every once in a while, they showed Casper Mountain in the background, this beautiful blue mountain. And while they were interviewing several of the contestants, they mentioned Casper, Wyoming quite a bit. And I want to congratulate Tom Jones and the Fair Board for putting that show on. I wish I would have known about it, but Casper got quite a bit of, and Natrona County got quite a bit of advertising out of that. But anyway, they showed this beautiful mountain sometimes, as the camera span around. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be a shame if you couldn't see the mountain? I mean, it was terrible. But anyway, I want to say in my 28 years of in and out elected office in this county and the city of Casper, I've never seen uproar like I've seen the last several weeks. I've been to many of these meetings, and I know several of you commissioners were there, and I've just never seen anything like it. And I would hope, and I don't know all the ins and outs about what the land board is going to do or whatever, and what you can do. I know you have the right for a conditional use permit, but I would hope that you folks would stop this. I would hope also, and this was said the other night at one of the meetings I was at the Agriculture Center, they want it to be worked out for the best for both parties. And because we know who's trying to put it in, and we know what kind of family they are, and we know what they have done for this community in this county and the state of Wyoming. But I would hope they would back off and just the wind in Natrona County, I'm sure you heard this all over several times, but it's just not the place for it. So I would hope whatever you folks can do, or whatever the what do you call them? The state of Wyoming can do, the land use board. I guess our meeting is Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. But I would hope they would stop this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Commission, good to see you tonight. Jason Knope, 4760 Ross Ridge Road. Apologize I didn't make it last week to educate, give out some displays, but I brought a few today. So last time we talked about shallow wells, deep wells, aquifers, where aquifers could be, where they couldn't be. My wells are 10 feet or less. This first drawing I'm going to give you, we just finished downloading the contours along the mountain. It took a few days to get all of that. It's a lot of data. So I'm going to hand out some contours to kind of go over the first one. So the first one is section 34 and 35. So what you're seeing right now is Section 34 didn't test out too well in their pits. This is all of Section 34 and 35. Right in the middle of Section 34 and 35, you can see a lot of black. That's contours. That's my residence right there. So everything highlighted runs to my residence at that shallow depth. My well's 8 feet deep. So there's a draw that's showing right next to my house. That draw actually doesn't carry any water. Our water is from the gravel that runs down. It's a sheet flow that runs down that slope to my house. So if you go in there and you contour that, you're going to change the way that water will move. Even if you don't even get down to the shell layer, you're going to change the way the aquifer, you're going to change the way our storage system, and you're going to change the way that water is going to move. So we just pulled these contours to start studying some of that part of the effects of this. But that's a big swath. That's half of that section that sheet flows to my house without any draws or ravines or anything to separate it, to deviate it out. It runs to my house. They were right behind my house when they test pitted, and we saw turbidity in our well. The second map I'm going to show you is section 35 and 36. 36 is the school section. Section 36 is the school section, which is a major draw, Squaw Creek. It does have ravines and things in it, but if you go up there and you start looking around section 36, you can see the buffalo berries and the bushes all along the hills on both sides of that draw. That's where the water's coming out. It's coming out of those hills that we talked about, those reservoirs. The reservoir, our second reservoir that's up here, they all leak, drain through July, August, September, and funnel water to all the residents down Squaw Creek. So if you go in and take that hill out on the right-hand side, you're going to change, and that's the hill they really would like to take right now. There, you're going to change that grade. You're going to change the way that water's going to flow down to the residents on the right side of section 34, and you're going to change the surface grading for the runoff of that. You can see how that hill tries to split the water there. Then if you look over on section 35, that's also where water's just coming out of the gravel, because all of this is a very shallow aquifer. So it's just coming out where the path of least resistance is. So if you go in there and you take 10 feet off, you're taking the pressure off. You could easily change the path of least resistance for that water in that gravel seam. And just because you didn't get down and divert it, if you get a path of least resistance, you're never going to get it back into its original path. So anywhere above all of that yellow, as soon as they start digging, you're going to change the path of least resistance for all of that water that's coming to the draws and the wells below these state sections. So it's not really a matter of if it will affect it, it will affect it. The more you open up, the more you're going to affect. And so I just really wanted to bring that to your attention with these contours. And like I said, we're just finished downloading these on our computer. And so we're going to start looking at a model of the actual watershed off the mountain. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sir. Sir.
Jason.
Yes. Sorry. Jason Knupp. I did have a question for you. Maybe you know, with your knowledge and what you're doing and what you do. As far as that area, are there any deeper wells in that area that are?
So nobody up this high has drilled that deep. The only wells that I've seen that are deeper are down in like the Skyline Ranches area, the Monument area, lower on Squaw Creek. I did find a couple more wells that were in the 1,000-foot range. 2 of them didn't hit water and 1 of them did. So you can hit water at 1,000 feet down there. It's really hit and miss. Yeah. So I'd like to bring in Pete Condis for the next one. I've pretty much worked with him all over this mountain. We've drilled everywhere. We drilled up at Hogadon. We've drilled everywhere on this mountain. Another guy that will tell you it's hit and miss. I mean, if you want to drill 1,000 feet, it's still not a guarantee. I think right now you've got to get down to that 2,500 foot. And so the more you're getting up the mountain. So this side of the mountain is the steep side of the mountain, right? So the plates went down and the plates went up. So as this plate's going down, the more you're going up the mountain, the more you're fighting that plate going down. So the more you're going to have to drill deeper. So I think you're going to have to be at 3,000 feet where we're at, but that's a guess. No one's drilled that deep, that high up on the mountain.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Bob Ide, 3838 Garden Creek Road. That address is actually about 2 miles, maybe a little more due east of where these state grazing exploration permits are. So from our area, I'm real familiar with the shallowness of the water and the fragility of the water up there. You know, everything has its own little mind. If you do something, it affects something else. I had the privilege last week, these fine folks here that are near these state leases, they took me on a tour for about 2 hours up there. I encourage everybody to go up there if you get the opportunity. I won't, go into the myriad of concerns because all of them, or most of them are valid and they needed to be vetted out. But to me, water is life. And if we start playing with that up there, it definitely is going to have a lot of repercussions. Like you've heard earlier, there's 250 water wells up there, or maybe more, that are affected by, that natural environment of those springs, the surface water, I guess Squaw Creek Road, Coates Road, primarily those areas right there, and it all flows, it all starts up there at the foot of the mountain. So I don't understand all of the laws with the conditional use permits and, how everything's going to start, maybe a question and answer, whether this is going to be, I know there's a SLIB board meeting on Thursday, and that will be a conversation there. That's, I think, why they're having the meeting here in Casper. And, where that goes from there, I don't know if the DEQ starts before you guys have to weigh in on a conditional use permit, but you probably know those answers a lot better than I do. The conditional use permit, I'm not even fully aware of whether that is actually going to be required or not, the way I understand it right now that it is. And if there's an extraction on state lands within MR1 zoning, that conditional permit is going to be required. So, but anyway, I want to thank everybody that's here tonight. There's, my initial impressions, I was in the legislature when this all came about. You get a lot of, we've gotten a lot of emails on this thing, and we do on a lot of legislation. Initial reaction is sort of the not my backyards, but there's a lot more to it than this. That's for sure. I think it, I don't want to say anything bad about Kyle True. I've told him maybe this isn't my favorite place to put a gravel pit, but he does have the leases on it, and we're going to have to go through the process. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name's Susie Urban and I live on Squaw Creek. I grew up on Squaw Creek. When I was 3 or 4, we moved to Squaw Creek, and I lived there until I got married, and then we moved away, and then I moved back because I love Squaw Creek. It's a beautiful, peaceful place, and that's why we bought out there again, was because we wanted to retire out there and, enjoy living in the land. When I was a little girl, the neighbors up the road from us, I think it's called fracked their well, where they put dynamite in and to try and get more water, whatever, it blocked ours completely. I was about in 5th or 6th grade, and my older sisters were teenagers. So that created a huge problem for my dad to haul water, because it was like during the winter time or something, we had to haul water. He was a fireman, so he hauled 5-gallon jugs home from the fire department every night for us to be able to flush the toilet or wash our hair or anything. My grandparents lived in town, so we'd go in town like once a week to take a shower. But huge inconvenience, and we had no drinking water. We had to do that also from jugs. And then they tried to drill and couldn't find water. And this was closer to the end of Squaw Creek, the beginning of Squaw Creek, down by the highway. And so we had to put in a cistern. He had to make a big cistern. We had to get a big truck that could haul a big tank for water. And at that time, the water plant was right there by the fairgrounds where the recycling place is now. I don't know what that was or anything, but I just remember going with my dad all the time to go get water and haul water. And they couldn't sell their place because the bank would not loan on a place that did not have water. So we're all going to be facing that same thing. If we cannot stay there because we don't have water, what are we going to do? It was for them to sell. They did. It was 15 years later. They finally got a well and were able to sell their property. But that was a huge inconvenience. It was, I remember it well, like it's the back of my hand. So it was, it's a big problem. So please consider that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, Commissioners, Chairman, and I'm Penny Van Heist, and we live at 5485 Coates Road. And my husband and I moved to Wyoming in '93, and had careers here. We retired in 2014 and moved around and traveled a bit, and bought a place in Texas. Well, we're back in Wyoming. This is home. And we purchased our place out there. Absolutely love living there, love the view, love the wildlife, love the ability to go up and walk our dogs, and it's just been a wonderful place. We have a 60-foot well that pumps, when it was last evaluated due to real estate, the prior people apparently they did have a cistern put in, because it was only pumping about 2 to 3 gallons per minute. Ideally, I've heard 5 or more is much better. So for a family, it would be of more than 2. It would definitely be a challenge. It does not keep our cistern full in the summertime. So the last couple of years, we have had to haul a little bit of water in because we have a garden that we like to grow. So just wanted you to know that the water situation is definitely a threat to us, and we're very concerned, and among all the other issues related to this project going forward. So I appreciate that you guys are willing to listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Commissioner, members of the board, thank you. In June and in October of '23, we're all aware.
We need your name.
I'm sorry, Carolyn Griffith, and I live up on Coates Road. Thank you. In June and in October of '23, we were well aware that that the Office of State Land Investments had recommended to the State Land Investment Board to approve the sand and gravel leases on several areas up there at the base of the mountain. And as unfortunate as we all think that is, that some of the research wasn't done ahead of time, I think they would have realized that it isn't what it used to be 25 years ago, 40 years ago. I mean, it just like a lot of other communities in this state, we're growing out, and we're growing towards those state school sections, and the residents are surrounding these school sections, for one. The State Land Investment Board has an obligation by law to try to make as much money as they can to support the schools. They also have an obligation to preserve the land's value. And I think therein lies part of the quandary, if you will. And so I'm not going to stand here and talk against the gravel pit at all, but what I will talk for is for recreation. And I would guess that I might be considered an expert in that area, having worked in it for 35 years. And served on a national board. And I could go on, but I'm not going to, because that's not me. That's probably the most uncomfortable I've been all night to even say that. So I do have a lot of experience in that area. And I will say that to preserve that area as open space, I think that provides some opportunities, and we will present this to, and it has been brought up to the SLID board, that there are some opportunities maybe for special lease agreements. But I think that's going to take some cooperation, and it's going to take some negotiations, I believe, with the parties involved. So I don't know how you can assist in that matter, whether that's conversations with the SLID board, whether that's conversations with the person that holds the lease or the company that holds the lease at this point. I don't know. But there may be some opportunities that we can still make money on that land while allowing grazing, while providing positive recreation. And I don't know what's going on with the mic, but that's okay. So I do think that we're looking at those types of things. And just would leave you, I don't know how many people are up for re-election, but 3 or 4 people, regardless of affiliation, this is according to the National Recreation and Parks Association, will vote for candidates based on their support of recreation and open spaces. So I think that's not made as a threat, but made as an encouragement to support activities such as this. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Rosemary Saban, Natrona County resident. For those of you in the audience that are questioning the government exercising common sense, your only recourse is your vote. What I heard during the work session was that we don't know relevant information, but we want to have authority to go after tax money in the form of grants for a path in a poorly populated area. It kind of puts the cart before the horse, and the letter of intent was voted yes to. The library was very reminiscent of any branch of government I've listened to, propaganda to support reasons why we can't, but we tried. For $675,000, again, why not purchase the Village Inn property and make use of the current location? How long is COVID going to be an excuse for everything? Airline subsidies and reasons why people aren't utilizing the library in as many numbers as they once was. Nick Layson, you made a comment that it was built in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and it's not sufficient for the next 30 years. Gosh, how do we have 100-year-old houses still standing? I would say obsolete is more like it, and hence the reason to expand uses to keep it relevant, costing the people double, and the services already funded. In regards to 12-foot ceiling light fixtures purchased with a 40% restocking fee, Mr. Nicolason said, "I hear you. I've mentioned before that hearing is passive, listening is active. Try listening more." Mr. North is taking a conservative approach and considering prudent spending of tax money. It's no different than the savings of a third the cost on a piece of equipment for the county from the meeting and the concerns that was strongly tied to the budget after the approval of the MRG, and that prompted the concern. Understand that the majority of this commission presumes we're all guilty until we prove ourselves innocent. I brought up the counties not adopting the IRCs last meeting 3 weeks ago, and they weren't checked into. You all just heard no testimony in favor. It was asked that it be tabled. And zoning resolution is responsible, unless I'm really confused, about the restrictions on building various structures in size. And it's known that that was a sorry document since its adoption. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Tracy Lamont, 9855 Crimson Dawn Road. For a point of clarification, I'm going to point out the leases that we're talking about here because it was very confusing. We were talking just about a school section to start with. We're talking about 8 separate leases scattered over approximately 5 square miles and over 3,200 acres plus, roughly. So I'm going to read you this is June 1st, 2023. Action, consider applications for sand, gravel, borrow material, and riprap lease. This was the board matter before the slip board in Cheyenne back on that particular date. June 1st, 2023. I'm only going to read the ones for Prism Logistics. Sand and gravel is all the prefixes to these lease numbers, and this is for point of record here and point of clarification. So if we could make sure that we don't lose this on the YouTube video. On it, the sand and gravel lease 01992, 440 acres, 440.15 acres in section 31. I'm not going to get into the breakdown of the town of the actual legal description. I'll be here all night. Sand and gravel lease 0993 for Prism Logistics for 640 acres. That's all of section 36, which is the school section that we were all confused by. Moving on. Sand and gravel lease 01994 for 320 acres, that's in section 30. Township 33, range 79 west. There's 3 townships involved here, but I'm not going to get into that. We'll just go through the leases and the sizes. Sand and gravel 01995 for 320 acres in section 35. Sand and gravel 01996 for 480 acres. Sand and gravel lease number 01997 for 160 acres. That was in June's activities. It came back to a board matter F1 on October 5th of 2023. 2 more leases were added. Sand and gravel lease 020003 for 317.82 acres in section 2. Sand and gravel lease 02004 for 553.34 acres on it in section 1, and that's in township 32 north, range 80 west on them. So the real surprise that I stumbled into, there's a 3rd lease involved, or a 3rd date involved here of August 3rd, 2023. Prism Logistics picked up another lease for 640 acres. I'm assuming that's a school lease, but it's lease number SG 02001, which is at the intersection of Circle Drive and 487, real close to the Bates Creek School. So they do have an alternative on it. I would assume that they're moving forward with that. I don't know that for sure. That's an assumption on my part, but I wanted to get that clarification out. One last other clarification is, if this does move forward in the conditional use hearing process, I don't think this has been pointed out to the folks, but it goes before the Planning and Zoning Commission first, and they hear it, and then they make their recommendation, and then it comes before the commissioners, correct?
Just got a quick question on this. Tracy, just out of curiosity, were any of those leases on their consent agenda, or were they individually brought up, or do you have that information? I'm just curious because I'm looking at their schedule for their meeting this week. It's 447 pages.
And it's
yeah,
laid
just
out the
wonder-
same way, so it's guesswork when they're gonna show up and make their decision.
Well-
I know what you're
well-
thinking, David, so everybody doesn't have to sit there for 4 grueling hours. It'll be the
Actually,
last.
that's not. Actually, what I was thinking is if it's on consent agenda, I'm wondering if everybody on the slip board was aware, if they were made aware of where some of these locations were, because I know a lot of times when you run a consent agenda and it's 200 pages long, it's tough to know just exactly what all's in there. So that's the reason why I'm asking that.
Yes.
Is for clarification.
And I messed up, but I didn't bring my, my agenda.
Chuck Gray mentioned that all these were on consent when they came in front of their board.
Okay.
So they weren't
Well,
aware of a lot of that.
So, I mean, that's been a big question, and a lot of times that's the reason why people vote for things, because we rely on, I know we do, you know, and when you've got that many things that are listed, you rely on what the staff is telling you.
What you're saying, it could slip in real quick and early in the meeting. So you best plan to be there for all 4 hours so you don't get one ran by you, right?
Well, something like that.
Is that a fair analysis?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, sir. Tracy, I appreciate the lease numbers and the dates that those were granted or approved, but has anybody obtained copies of the leases themselves? Can I get copies? Natrona County Board of County Commissioners would like copies.
All you have to do, sir, is go into their website, under the mineral block at the bottom, and you can pull each one individually.
And I appreciate that, but if someone had them handy, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Peter, they're all in the agenda for, and they're on the website for the Casper Mountain Preservation Alliance. I don't know if you remember that, but I would encourage you to join that. But all of the past documentation for all of these leases are tied up on the agenda for this go-around. Everything's laid out there in black and white. It's also on the Coach Road, Squaw Creek gravel pit resistance group too as well. It's all starting to run together for me, so I'm sorry about that. I'll do the best I can.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Just to hit on that last question from the chairman, I will send you, I've gathered up all of that information from Deputy Director Crowder at the State Land Office. He gave me copies of all of the leases regarding the Coates Road situation. The first letter I sent out to the 150 emails that I received, I sent him copies of that, and I will forward you that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Greg Warger, 7,000 Coates Road. Commissioners, appreciate it. Here's a copy of all those leases.
Oh, you had them. You're just always behind on Barton with some things, you know?
Anyone else?
Judy Jones, 335 North 8 Mile. There was no public comment on the MRG. I was kind of curious of why that was. You could answer that. 2.5 million to date has been spent, I'm assuming, on the airport out there. And, or is that right, Rose? 2.5 on the airport?
Nearly 2.5 million to the MRG for Delta Skywest, one flight to Salt Lake.
Okay. And now, I think we heard from about 5 expert witnesses. No, didn't we?
Maybe.
Wasn't it what you wanted? Okay, how did these guys get qualified to do it?
Well, when I get my chance, I'm going to address that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Very good. Now we will have commissioner comments, and we will start with Commissioner Laird.
So, I'm really happy you're all here. And I'm really happy that this expert thing I put out is soaking in. And let me tell you why that is. There was a recent Supreme Court case just decided by the Wyoming Supreme Court against the Teton County Commissioners because they submitted a reversal without the proper facts. Now, whatever ruling we make here, I don't want it to get reversed. So when I tell somebody I think they need a lawyer, or that they should consider getting a lawyer and a couple expert witnesses, that has a very deep meaning to it. Because I don't think there's a person in this courtroom that wants to lose this case. And I say courtroom because I've been in here many times on cases I didn't want to lose. And I didn't lose them. So the doctor, he came and he finally said something in his professional understanding with what this kind of dust can do to the human being lungs. Everybody knows you need water to live. Everybody has that general opinion, and you can express those kind of opinions unless you're an expert. But he's an expert. Andrew Beamer, I've known him for a long time. I think he's a great guy. And when he talked about that road up there, he's an expert. He knows what he's talking about. Jason, he's an expert on that. Finally, we get some really good information. Now, what I'm going to tell all you guys is this isn't a public hearing. So if these people don't, if there is a public hearing, then the people better come back and testify that night. So it isn't over for any of you yet. Now, I don't think there's a commissioner on here that doesn't care about the people. I think they all do. Real was, I think, born and raised here, went to high school here. Milne was, I was. Mr. Nicolason was. You were almost born here, weren't you? So, you know, we understand Wyoming people. We also think that businessmen that want to do something and do it legally, you have to look at that. Two, we have rules that people have to abide by, and we have to interpret those rules. What I've heard already is that all these permits have been granted to Prism, and that he's apparently paid the money, and there's a contract with the state. So I would be totally surprised if the state somehow figured out a way to cancel the contract. It's like any contract. If you guys go sign a contract and then you want to get out of it, there's going to be somebody that says, no, you made a deal. So what the state has already done is it's more in concrete than you might think. Now, unfortunately, the state didn't contact the local government and the local people. It's kind of like the fire chief down there in Cheyenne going to tell us how we should tell people how to build houses. Same thing. Wyoming people, each county should run their own business. Because you all know about Casper Mountain better than anybody else does. And you all love Casper Mountain. So we have to look at all of the evidence. So if people come in here, I'm going to give you an easy example. Today's Tuesday, and it's a great day. Now, I did two things. I stated a fact, which today's Tuesday, and a great day is my opinion. There may be some people out here that says, oh, this Tuesday was a terrible day. That's why opinions don't mean much in court from just without substance. So when you have an expert witness who comes in and has dealt with these things, like this water problem, that I have used water experts. I know what kind of a water problem will go on up there if they start digging into the side of that mountain. The other thing that hasn't been addressed, and I asked if there was going to be blasting up there. There might be, and I can tell you that. You get a blasting expert, they'll tell you how far that ground will shake and may crack your walls and everything else. I think all Wyoming people are experts in the wind. I'd count everybody in Natrona County as a wind expert. If they go up there on the side of that mountain, I've had clients whose houses, the roof of their house got blown off up there. I had out in one subdivision, I had client's house fill up with dirt because some guy in the back just graded down his land and didn't worry about watering it down, and it all blew into their houses and their door locks and their car door locks. And when it was all over, there were 17 houses. He had to pay each homeowner $50,000. His insurance paid for it because of the damage. So I've got to wind this up because the other commissioners have something to say. But I see Marcy's here, and she's a darn good lawyer. And so is her partner. And I'm sure that Mr. True has darn good lawyers and experts. And so it's the commissioner's job to weigh the evidence, just like it is if you go into a courtroom. The judge weighs the evidence. The 3 doctors come in and say, this didn't hurt the guy, and the guy's poor wife says, well, it did hurt him. She's not an expert. She can say he got hurt and he took this medicine, but we don't know that tied in. But when the doctor over there comes in and says it, it's a whole different statement. Thank you all for coming.
I do want to thank everybody for coming. I've been to several of these meetings where you guys are all there. You've sent emails and we've responded. I appreciate Senator Ride coming tonight. He lives up there and he understands water issues and he understands a lot of this stuff too. There's a lot of experts. There's a lot of expertise. And I know that you guys, I've had a lot of people ask me specifically what you need to do. And right now, we don't have anything before us. The permit hasn't even been granted by the state land board to do anything yet. So we're not trying to blow you off or anything else, but right now we can't really tell you anything because we don't know which direction this is going. And that's something that we have to look at. Until they pass that and it goes through, right now the DEQ is going to have, if it passes the state land board, then they're going to have a water quality permit. That takes a long time. That's not something that just happens overnight. They're going to have to go through other steps that they have to get before it can even come to the commission. And we're talking several months down the road. So right now, all we can do is listen and collect information from you. And that's what we're doing. And we do appreciate you guys coming in here and talking to us because that gives us a better background for what your concerns are. And it tells us what we need to be looking at. And then we have concerns that you guys have touched on, but there are other concerns that we as a commission have discussed individually, that we need to look at. One of it's the traffic and the road situation. That is something that that's going to make a difference. So we're looking at this stuff, but right now all we can do is collect information. We can't really give you any direction because we don't know which direction to go. So don't misunderstand us not responding to some of your questions as us not being interested. That's not what it is. We're not responding because we can't respond at this point in time on some of this stuff. So keep giving us the information, keep sharing that with us, and we'll do what we can. But that's as far as we can guarantee right now because we really don't know. It's kind of like waiting for Christmas. You don't know what's under the tree until you open the packages. Hopefully we don't get a lump of coal. So, but that's basically where we're coming from on this. So I just don't want anybody to misunderstand us not being fully engaged with some of the conversations, as us not being interested, because that is not the case. We are interested in what you're doing, and we are interested in this county and what's good for it. So, thanks.
Commissioner Friel.
I just want to say I appreciate everybody coming here. Excuse me, I got a cough. I've eaten like 20 cough drops tonight, but I truly feel that we learn something every week when you guys come here and you bring more information to us, and it helps us make an informed decision when that time comes that we have to make a decision. So I certainly appreciate that. I would tell you that if you do plan on talking, and honestly, a comment was made about all these petitions that have been signed. Thursday, a copy of those need to be taken over to the meeting, the SLIB board meeting at Thyra Thompson at 9 a.m. You need to have those with you and give those to the guys at the state, guys and gals at the state. And if you do plan on talking, I would also remind you to get online, because you do have to sign up if you want to talk over there. You can't just come in and it's not just an open forum for you to say anything. You're going to have to sign up ahead of time. So if you do plan on doing that, make sure you get online and I'd make that happen like tonight or tomorrow. So thank you.
Commissioner Milne.
So talking about experts and all that, I'd get with someone who understands fracking, possibly as well. That good example of the homemade frack of their well and shutting down another one. It's called communicating, where wells communicate between each other when something like that happens. It happens all the time. It has to be, there's methods in the oil and gas to keep that from happening or to happen. So if that's an interest in somebody wanting to go look at that avenue, but I'm going to harp on the same point that I made before. I know there was potential other considerations, but it seems to me that the state of Wyoming needs a process where when something like the SLIB board comes along and a big project that may have implications to a local community is there, that local community can have a voice, can have a seat at the table. If you're not at the table, you're on the table, you're for dinner. And we need a process where that can happen. It's a shame where the federal government has all these different programs for local community involvement in their projects. You've got resource advisory councils, federal advisory committees, local government advisory committees. All of them have inputs into different functions or different projects of the federal government. Do they have to listen to us? Obviously not. Look at Rock Spring down there along Rock Springs area. But at least you have a seat at the table. Local communities don't have a seat at the table with the state. It'd be nice to have that. So maybe that could be a project later next year. Sir, please. Anyways, that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming tonight. I appreciate it. I think all the commissioners are insightful in their comments. I agree with a lot of what's been said, and we do learn. We learn about the public sentiment, but we learn about the topography, the contours, the depths of wells, how fragile the water systems are up there. We learn about, we all learn about the roads. I think we had already, I know some of us, I have dug pretty deep into the conditions of Coates Road. And I can't see a way forward for an industrial operation of this nature to utilize Coates Road in its present form. So that will be a big item, whether there's a conditional use permit application or not. I think that we've made it clear that that's a county road, not a state road. That's a county road, not a private road. The city of Casper has invested funds, you folks, a lot of you folks. How many in this room, raise your hand if you invested in Coates Road? So, you know, we have a couple, and I'm sure we've had at least that many or more that directly invested in Coates Road improvements within that 2021, 2022 timeframe. So we recognize that protecting that investment in that road is real critical. We're not going to forget that. I would say that one of the speakers tonight said that Mr. True or the applicant should bring an expert, and I would say he will. And then you need competent legal evidence to address either factually with a factual witness or through expert testimony. And listen, if you know your job, you can be an expert. If you're a mechanic and you've never been to college, you can be an expert. And some of the best experts are actually without credentials like that. But you got to know your stuff. And that's what we're saying. And it can be you if you happen to live on Coates Road, or it can be somebody from New York City that knows gravel pits or whatever the case may be. So I think that's what Commissioner Laird's maybe just a summary of what he's tried to say the last couple meetings, or at least part of what he said on the importance of expert testimony. The state land meeting, I mean, continue your efforts in communicating with the Office of State Lands and your 5 elected officials. I think they need to know how critical this is to Natrona County, and that we're not going to forget it. We're not going to forget it after Thursday or after whatever decision's made on this gravel pit. We're going to remember it. So I would say I have had a very important healthcare in Natrona County meeting that's been scheduled for some time. That's Thursday afternoon. So I'm going to attend as much of this meeting as I can, but if I have to be gone from the portion that actually deals with this gravel pit, I apologize, but I know some of the other commissioners plan to be there. Anyway, I do appreciate it. Thank you for your continued concern, your continued emails, your continued phone calls. Thank you for the leases and the rules and regulations. I have some thoughts on that, Greg. I'll get with you offline. So with that, we will move into executive session pursuant to Wyoming statute 16-4-405 and let's see, A9, A2, and A3, if there's a motion.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Laird, seconded by Commissioner Milne. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We will reconvene strictly for the purposes of closing up the meeting. We're not going to have any other discussion or matters tonight after executive. Thank you all.